What's happening, everybody? My name is Ryan Thomas. You're tuning in to the Thomas Take Sports Podcast live on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and last but not least, GrandstandSportsNetwork.com. I'm your host, as always, coming to you live this fine morning in Western New York, a dreary, soggy, snowy, sleety, whatever you want to call it, morning in the 716, coming to you live from Buffalo, New York, and I am your host. So, past few days, obviously, I've been extremely active in terms of my Twitter account, at Thomas Takeover, the Thomas Take Sports Podcast, Twitter page. And I've gained a lot of followers in the meantime since I switched from my personal page to this page. I didn't really use Twitter a whole lot. I like it, but sometimes it can get kind of annoying just tweeting and posting one thing at a time, where I'm always a guy that I like to, I don't really like to stay on there too long. I don't like to have my phone, buried into my face, or my face buried into my phone, I should say. And since I changed the profile to my personal podcast page, I've been finding new ways to use Twitter and to reach out to the audience. And one of the ways I've been doing that is the Thomas Take Twitter polls, where I've really enjoyed going live on the show, not just on the show, but posting those polls, every hour. And each poll is a different poll, where I've done UFC polls, I've done MMA polls, Bellator's got some good fights tonight, and obviously I've done some Buffalo Bills polls that have been very interesting, NFL draft polls, you name it. So give me a follow on Twitter and send me some poll ideas that you would like to vote on, and I will post those on my Twitter page for everybody, and give options that I think are good options. So part one of today's show, which will be a two-part show, half an hour on the air, 15-minute parts as always. I like to have it broken up into pieces, 15-minute pieces. And I want to talk about E.J. Gaines, a player that is obviously a hot topic in Buffalo right now, a guy that is a soon-to-be free agent if the Buffalo Bills cannot re-sign him. And there's been so many reports as to what's going to happen with E.J. Gaines, how much should he get paid, what should he make? And it's an interesting situation because E.J. Gaines was a successful player this past season, but he only played in 8 of 16 games. He didn't, he was in and out of the lineup. So I have a tough time personally with just the idea of whether we should pay him or not based on that alone. When he was on the field, he obviously contributed to the Buffalo Bills. He obviously did a lot of things that were really great. But in the midst of this season, this off season, I should say, with some of the other questions that we have, I have a lot of decisions as far as boxes to check off in my mentality of paying him or not paying him. So first, let's think about how E.J. Gaines got here. He got here in a trade with the Buffalo Bills, sent Sammy Watkins to the Los Angeles Rams. In return, we received their second-round pick and E.J. Gaines. E.J. Gaines was a guy that was really an outcast on the Rams. A young corner that didn't really seem to fulfill his potential with the Rams, a guy that Sean McDermott thought that would fit very well in his defensive scheme. And Sean was right. Coach McDermott was right. E.J. Gaines comes in. He did very well while he was in the lineup. But like I said, disclaimer, while he was in the lineup. Being the fact that he was out for some of the games, most of the games, half of the games, I think that there could be one of two things to take away from this. Was E.J. Gaines that good, or did E.J. Gaines just fit the scheme? And if E.J. Gaines just fit the scheme, is he realistically worth paying $7.5 to $10 million? Now, earlier today, what inspired this conversation, I was on Twitter and I was talking to Rob Quinn and Aaron Quinn, who I believe are on the Bills Wire, and we were talking about how I was talking about how I wouldn't pay E.J. Gaines that much. If you can't already tell, that's the boat that I'm in. And they were talking about how they felt, one man in particular, one of the guys in particular was talking about how E.J. Gaines is worth $7.5 million per year, for 1 year at least. And I thought, would he accept that? EJ Gaines is looking for a long-term deal. Would he accept a one-year offer? I mean, at the face value, of course, that would be an ideal situation. $7.5 million for one season. We see where he's at, the following year. I understand that end of it. But in this situation, we know he wants to be paid long-term. He's 25, 26 years old. He's coming off somewhat of a career year, and that's the thing. All those things I just said, he's coming off of somewhat a career year where he played 8 games. It's very tough to really justify paying a guy like that. And I made the point that it's tougher for me just based on the fact that the CBA is what it is and the rookie contracts are what they are, to, on the books, pay EJ Gaines more than what Trey White is making. I think that's a little bit crazy. And I know why that is. I know why Trey White makes the amount that he makes. He's on his rookie deal. But paying EJ Gaines that much as the number 2, while our number 1 corner is making practically peanuts, I think that's a little bit of a slap in the face, especially when Trey White was arguably the defensive rookie of the year, and EJ Gaines could barely stay in the lineup long enough to play 10 games in the season. So there's a lot to be taken there, and I think that some of what I was saying was getting a little bit misconstrued. I think that EJ Gaines is a good player. I just don't think paying him that much money is worth it. I really don't. And I think that there's so many needs on this team. We already have someone coming into the building, Vontae Davis, yesterday, who's a little bit long in the tooth, but I think he's still decent. But more importantly, he's cheaper than EJ Gaines. So realistically, Buffalo is already looking at cheaper options, and I know that someone will go out and pay EJ Gaines, and in my mind, overpay for EJ Gaines, and I don't think it will work out well. Depending on the team, he might go to a team that really just needs that one more secondary piece, and he might be the last piece of the puzzle, or he will go to a team and be paid as if he's a number 1 corner, where I don't think he is. So, all in all, I would say that the Buffalo Bills shouldn't pay EJ Gaines what he is demanding. If they were going to do a 1-year deal, I think that there's some room for that. If they were going to do some sort of a 2-year deal where the 1 year is $7 million and the second year is a $5 million deal, I would definitely be more inclined to do that than pay him, let's just say what was thrown at me, 3 years, $22 million, or more than that. I think more than that is ridiculous. And I know the going rate, the market, as Sal Capaccio said, the market for corners, the market for those corners is the marketplace for them because they're actual number 1 corners, whereas EJ Gaines is not. And even those guys, some of the guys in that group that are number 2 corners, lasted a full season and played at a high level, whereas EJ Gaines played at a high level in spades but couldn't survive the entirety of a 16-week NFL season. So there's a lot to take there. There's definitely a lot of positions that the Buffalo Bills have big choices on. One of those positions is corner with EJ Gaines. Another position is Preston Brown. What are they going to do with Preston Brown? Preston Brown led the NFL in tackles. It's such a misconstrued stat sometimes. What does that really mean? There should be more advanced stats, I think, statistics on tackles. Tackles behind the line, obviously, is one of them. But just tackles can be so misconstrued. There's one year where Dante Whitner had like 100 tackles. It's not really a good thing if your running back or the ball carrier is getting to the safety, being that they're on the back end of the field, right? So there's a lot to take there. I think that Preston Brown is someone that's going to command too much money, and I think EJ Gaines is someone that is commanding far too much money. Too much money to the point where I don't know if I bring those guys back from Buffalo. I'd maybe look to bring in some of our own players that we expect to be here for a long time. And as I have mentioned, guys, we have already started doing that with certain players such as Trey White, who is on a rookie contract the next 3-4 years, and that's a huge advantage for us to have more young, stout players because we're paying them less money, and their cap situation, as far as 2019, is spectacular. Their cap situation in 2018 is so-so. We have some players that are on our team, guys like Cordy Glenn that have been in and out of the lineup. Eric Wood, obviously he's going to be on the books. The details of that situation I'm not too sure of, but I know it's not pretty. Charles Clay's making $8-9 million this year. McCoy's making $8-9 million this year. We're paying some players. So there's other areas of need on our team where we might need to replace those players that we currently have that are asking for too much money with players that are younger that we can get on rookie contracts. There's definitely a lot to take there. And obviously the one position that people are talking about is quarterback. And it's so easy to fall into that trap of talking about the quarterback constantly, being that the Bills have needed a quarterback for such a long time. But we got some other issues on this team. It wasn't a quarterback away from going to a Super Bowl. It was a quarterback away from winning a playoff game, in my personal opinion. And that's all this is opinion. No one knows more than the next guy. Only the Buffalo Bills brass know what they're doing. People try to get the beat, people try to get the scoop, and rarely they get it until it actually happens. Very, very rarely. Only the guys like Adam Schefter and Chris Mortensen and who else? I mean, I'm just spitballing because really those are the only two that I can think of that come to my mind. Some of the guys on NFL Network, obviously the major networks, and there's all these guys on Twitter that I'm not talking about anybody in particular. I'm really not. I just see it every day, trying to say that they got the scoop. It happens every single season. People say, "Oh, we have the scoop. We have this. We have that," and they're wrong almost every single year. The only team that knows what's going to happen, the only people that know what's going to happen are Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott. And obviously the Bills scouts and the Bills organization. Other than that, we are all left waiting till we see the free agency start in March and until we see April 26th, the NFL draft. I think I don't know where it is, in Dallas? Yeah, in Arlington, or at AT&T Stadium. So, I mean, there's just a lot to take there. I've posted a wide array of Twitter polls for people that are MMA fans, football fans, hockey fans. My Sabres one actually did very well. I had over 120 some votes on it, which is a lot. Usually the polls don't do that much because people don't really know what they are. And my Twitter is so new. I mean, I really haven't started using Twitter efficiently until just now. I made one, kind of tweeted here and there, but it wasn't really anything crazy. Whereas now that it's the podcast page, I really want to be able to communicate with the people that listen to the show and the people that watch the show on Facebook Live and Periscope, and my YouTube channel, the Thomas Take Sports Podcast. There's so many avenues to check out my stuff, whether it's Facebook/Thomas Takeover, my podcast page on Facebook. You can follow me at Thomas Takeover. You can follow me on grandstandsportsnetwork.com. I mean, these guys are doing a fantastic job. Eric Turner was on the Howard Simon show this morning. He did a very good job talking about the quarterbacks, whether it's Darnold or Lamar Jackson or some of the other ones that are talked about lately, Rosen, Allen, Rudolph. There's a lot of guys that are being talked about right now that are being linked to the Buffalo Bills, and only time will tell. Only time will tell. There's a guessing game. We can guess at what we would like them to get. We can guess at what we think they would want to get, but we really don't know until April 26th. So EJ Gaines, I just don't feel as if he's worthy of a $9 to $10 million deal, or a $7.5 to $10 million deal, I should say. I think $7.5 million for one season, as Aaron articulated on Twitter. I think that's fair. That is far more fair because we're able to actually play the guessing game and see where he's at after that one season. But let's just say we sign him to the $7.5 million deal for one season and he gets hurt again. That's money down the drain. And I think we need to move on from players that have shown that they can't stay healthy, whether it's E.J. Gaines, whether it's Cordy Glenn. We need to move on from those guys. So I'm Ryan Thomas. That was the Thomas Take Part 1 of today's show. I will be right back, and I'm going to be talking some mixed martial arts. Take care, everybody.